honorable guests, friends, and family. Many years ago, a woman gave birth to a child who happened to die a few days later. A few months later, the woman fell pregnant again and gave birth to a second child who also died early in his life. The woman's mother waved her finger at the daughter, sensing that something was amiss. "You are dealing with an Abiku child," the mother explained.
The Yoruba tradition explains that Abikus are spirits who come to earth as children, but are bored of our world and choose to return to their home, the other world. Abikus shamelessly leave their stillborn bodies to their mothers. After all, they have a life of their own to fulfill.
The only way an Abiku child can remain on earth is if its body is marked with scars, so that the maker does not recognize it when it tries to return to the other world. And so, the mother's third child was marked with 2 scars on each cheek, so that it may remain trapped in its earthly body. The Abiku became a little boy.
Pius liked to share this story on the first night of his African literature class, with a boyish laugh, perhaps incredulous to the mystery of his birth. He would conclude the lecture with, "I am Abiku."
For many of us, it was this story told by our professor that first showed the ability to connect beyond this Canadian academic space. That the things we do, the path we walk, the ways in which we use pen, tongue, tablet, phone, have a higher destiny beyond the discourse in chalkboard classrooms.
Chinua Achebe once wrote that storytellers are a threat because they threaten all champions of control. They frighten usurpers of the right to freedom of the human spirit. In state, in church or mosque, in party congress, in the university, or wherever.
Professor Pius Adesanmi, or as we call him, Pius, an African, a Nigerian, a Canadian, understood the power of storytelling as conceptualized by the venerable Achebe. He taught African literature in a Canadian university, showing us all aspects of African life, whether the divine, the profane, the mixed realm in between, were powerful enough for stories and for lessons.
How do we begin to eulogize a man larger than life, to memorialize, to entomb such an audacious spirit? A man whose distinct laugh and conspicuous dressing pierce through any hall, any space, any convention.
When we remember Pius, tears are marred with laughter. We think of the times when his office in Downton Tower at Carleton University, where we took the form of spiders, concocting elaborate tales, slipping late assignments under his door just in the nick of time. Or the times at Patterson Building with his door wide open, as if God was watching a lowly man. How will I drop my late assignment to my professor's Dropbox while Pius's door is open, without him noticing me? The thought of trickery, again, ever so near.
You think of Pius, the creatively enterprising director of the Institute, whose endless ideas for committees, projects, and presentations, which some characterize as epiphanic, came while sitting in his chair with his legs on his desk, moments that we would later see storied on his Facebook page.
Remember Pius's war on mediocrity as a concept, a lifestyle, and fate. For such a great man, he demanded even greater from his students.
For some of us, he uncovered our buried potential. He plucked even the meekest of us and said, "You will be part of this and this committee." An unbeknownst initiation to a life lived with cause and purpose, and unending email chains featuring June Payne, Nduka Otiono, and Blair Rutherford as copied guests.
And so here we are again, trying our best against all mediocrity, trying to piece together memories of an indescribable man, the only way he showed us how to, through stories and through lessons.
Perhaps the most potent lesson Pius taught us was to never doubt the power of prose, of words masterfully threaded together to reclaim space and demand more of the world that surrounds us. We will use them in our works, we will use them in our tweets, and we'll go on and use them in our lives.
As students, we often do not realize the company we encounter on a daily basis. Pius was our director, our professor. He was a world-renowned public intellectual, a best-selling author, and an agenda-setting cultural critic. In stepping into his office, we were in the company of a son of the Nigerian literary tradition.
However deserving he was of the title professor, many of us will remember how his swag remained untarnished by the harshness of Canadian winters, or how his Facebook posts continued to be written when so-and-so was waiting for the professor's speedy reply, or how he rightfully reclaimed his rights as head of an institute by unapologetically staging photo shoots in the narrow hallways of Patterson Hall.
Just as death is not the end of African folklore, rather, a continuum where the dead continue to inform the living, just like Anansi, we borrowed these stories from our classrooms, not to only call upon his memory, but to go forth with our lives that are devoid of a culture of mediocrity. In his honor, we continue to strive for excellence. In his honor, we will uphold his legacy of a rigorous African scholarship, of brazen truth-telling, of unabashed creativity, and a radical imagination for a better future.
So today, on behalf of students and alumni of the Institute of African Studies, and all the students at Carleton whose lives have been deeply impacted by Pius's work, I extend my sincerest condolences to Mrs. Adesanmi and her 2 daughters, and to all his loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you.